However, I do want to welcome Pastor Dowell from Straitway Truth and Straitway Ministries back with us today. And, I hope that everybody is, looking to take the time to take part in our conversation today, because we're going to talk about morality is one of the integral portions. The biggest thing is morals are going to play into when you see people with food stocks with you, when you see homesteaders, when you see individuals who are creating their own way, they're creating their own path, and they're servicing a community. Well, morals would be what would dictate to you to not steal from them, to not overpower them. Morals would also come into play, as I say, if you see that they have a lack of security, and you know that there are people in the area who may take from them, who may attempt to overpower them. That it is also a moral thing to warn them and to provide them with other information. And without further ado, I'm pretty sure that we now have Pastor Dowell live on the telephone.
Shalom. Good evening. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing great.
All right.
And I guess we're coming up on the break. You got about 3 minutes to start into the question, and
okay.
We're going to let it tumble. We're going to let it tumble from there. And I already posed the question to the public, and I posed it to you before, but I'll give you a brief synopsis. In the idea, let's use this as a jumping off point to start talking about morals. And the idea of being prepared. Mind, body, and soul / spirit, faith, depending on what venue people are coming from. In the grand scheme of having the possibility of a remnant continue to exist, to have a renaissance and maybe a rebuilding phase, or things of that nature, in your opinion, how does morals play into that? How can one tell if they actually have morals? And what will the impact within the broader scope of a renaissance, a reconstruction, or a continued existence?
Well, morals, basically in a nutshell, it's number one, we all live by them, whether we like it or not, or whether we choose to define them or not. Morals are a set of principles, and it makes no difference how people want to try to define it, whether it be philosophy, theology, ideology, religion. It makes no difference. Morals or morality is nothing more than a list of rules that we all must live by and abide by just in order to get along in this life. And I can tell you right now that if we do not define what morality is in the time that we're living in now, that means we're not making a distinction between what is right and what is wrong, what is good or what is bad. And whenever we're going to have a set of morals or a set of rules and regulations, we also need to determine who is going to be the one that's going to set the authority. Who is the one that is actually going to set the authority, and who is the last say-so as far as the setting up these standards and these rules? Because there's no way we can even run a society today without having morals and rules. And I know that many people want to try to get away from any type of rules and regulations because they want to be free, which they're actually entering off into another system called secular humanism. But I can tell you this right now, that we will have somebody to set a standard, whether it be Yah or whether we have determined to define morality on our own terms and have become a God to our own selves, which I would not suggest that anyone take that advice or whatsoever at all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, just before we get rolling back into this, I'm going to drop 3 links into the actual chat room. If you're not in the chat room, for those of you that ask questions, because you'd send me emails, and you referred to wanting to be able to view Bible studies, you were wanting direct links to be able to see past information. I'm pretty sure he said between the last 2 and 3 years, his tech team has actually produced and put it online. So I'm going to drop 3 links into the chat room for everybody out there who is wanting to actually get this stuff taken care of, and who want to go in there and who want to view this data and information. The very first one was the onlinechurch.org, where you could actually look and see Pastor Dowell over there on his own webpage. You'll see a live streaming feed. Now, there are 3 different websites. There are 3 different things that are there. as utility tools for you to use. And that third link is not actually coming through. So the third link is a YouTube page, and it is called Straitway Tech Team. And it's over there at YouTube. You do a search for Straitway Tech Team. You'll be able to pick that up, and you'll be able to see past information and things that have gone on. Pastor Dowell, you had left off talking about higher authorities and morality and building society, and I want to get right back into that if we can. Pastor Dowell, you were actually talking about morality and higher powers, and I want you to continue right back into that and continue your thought process on where we left off.
Okay, let me try so we don't distort and try to mess up the perspective of what the people have heard before, because I don't know how many technical difficulties there were. But I know one thing: the devil don't want the people to hear what we have to say here tonight. So anyway, I've learned over the years that man has never stopped in his quest, his or her quest, in trying to play God. Now, in a society, in a community, no matter what you do, no matter where you go in life, you have to have some form of rules and regulations, which is actually is the benchmark and the hallmark, is the sign of who determines what moralities are. In other words, if you're going to have any type of morals, or if you're going to have morality in a society or a system or community, somebody has to be the principal authority. And we're living in a world right now that is gendering towards secular humanism, where nobody wants to define what's right and what's wrong. And by saying that, they're saying that there's no absolutes. And when they're saying there's no absolutes, then they want everybody to say, okay, you can't tell me that I'm wrong or right, and neither can I tell you that I'm wrong or that you're wrong or you're right. And if we continue to keep following this type of system right here, we're going to continue to keep watching our decline in society. For instance, I'm a pastor. I do not agree with the homosexual lifestyle. I don't agree with it whatsoever at all. And the reason why I don't agree with it is because I default to a higher power. I default to the Most High Yahweh, the King of the universe, who sets morality universally for everybody in the whole entire world. Others may choose to follow man and try to define morality from a man's perspective, such as a dictionary, to see what Oxford or either the Webster's has to say, and then they may choose to follow those viewpoints and perspectives. But know this: no matter what way you go in life, you cannot function in this world without having a set of rules, a set of laws, a set of commandments, morals, or what is defined as morality.
You know, what's really funny is, I know we're going to hit another commercial break here, is as people are listening to what he has to say, remember back in time, I did a show where I was talking about moralities and there being actual definable boundaries. And remember that the caller called in and said that the only absolute was survival. And I'm gonna finish that story when we come back right after these messages. Pastor Dowell won't be able to talk to you during the commercial because you're on the phone, but we will pick up right after this.
All right.
All right. Well, welcome to the broadcast, everybody. But as we were talking about morals and these issues, and, you know, first thing before I get to that, for those of you in the chat room, you choose to enter into the verbal combat arena of a chat room. You know, you take what you get. You know, there are a lot of people that dish it out and they want to say sly remarks and so forth. Well, you know, you represent your own mindset, and everybody has their own background. So with that being said, when we talked about definitive answers and absolutes. And a gentleman had called in not so many months ago and told me that the only absolute was survival, and he posed a question to me, that if I was on a ship and the ship sank, okay, and there was some plank wood or whatever, and I got my wife onto the wood, and I would include my child, but, you know, my wife and I, in his story was, we're on the wood and we're floating by. And another gentleman had saved himself and food, okay, and I guess beverage as well, on his little raft that he was floating along. And the man posed it to me that murder and whatnot went out the window, that I could take the food from him because it was about survival. And he argued with me because I told him he was wrong, and he didn't really like the aspect, because if I take the food whether or not it is for my survival and for my wife's survival, it is still theft. It is his food. It is his beverage. It is his life. If I murder him and push him off in the ocean so that me and my wife can survive, yes, survival will possibly be accomplished, but I will have murdered. I will have committed thievery, and selfishness would be in your heart, a motivation within your heart and in your mindset that is wrong. Okay, I don't really care how you break it down. That is an absolute. The choice is whether you are going to break your moral code or right and wrong to achieve your survival. That is the question that was really posed. It wasn't about whether or not it was morally, it was murder or not, because it is. Because he thought to get the food onto his little plank that he was floating along, and I went and got my wife and didn't get any food. That would be a failure on my part. Now, granted, on the other side of the coin, the moral thing I think would be to share, to work together, and go to that nature. But he may choose to, attempt to kill me and take my wife and keep the food and the woman for himself and so forth. But these are things we're talking about, and maybe you can, the reason why I bring that up is because Pastor Dowell was talking about the standards of education, really, and the society, what society has been pre-programmed with. This was a college graduate, college educated, possibly a PhD, but I'm not sure. I think it was a master's. And, they teach this in school, and it's called situational ethics. Okay, and this is what is taught to your children. This is what is taught to all the young minds coming out of college and so forth, that the ends justify the means. And this is the reason why whenever the statement comes up where I hear come out of her, my people, and biblical statements like that, or the New World Order, and you're looking at this, I view it as coming out of the system. I view it as leaving behind the decadent, the immorality, situational ethics, and all of these boil down to one thing, that the ends justify the means. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the key root idea of Marxism. Okay, and I've been telling you all along, Marxism has been written as the antithesis to the Bible. Whether you understand that or not, whether or not that computes in your brain, is my problem. It is the reality. And, hopefully, what I would like to do is now kick it back to Pastor Dowell and have him expound on some of that I just said, or tell me if what I just said makes no sense at all.
Well, Eric, as I was sitting here listening to you, I began to think how that, this flawed logic, this flawed philosophy and perspective is seriously being defined by this generation, because no doubt you can tell that you and I grew up in a quite different generation where we think a little bit different. And no doubt the school system of today is actually teaching the children that there are no absolutes. Now, if we follow that line of thought with this guy that had a master's degree, and he says that the ends justify the means, and then, what then I guess I could take a gun if I have a sidearm on me and shoot him in the face, following his same philosophy, and kill him, and that way I know that at least three of us will survive, because the ends justify the means. But what we're dealing with here is this. See, most people who have those viewpoints and those perspectives, they don't want the same things that they would do to other people to be done to them. Now, here's the angle right here. What you're dealing with now is you're dealing with people who have a seared conscience, and what they do is they sear their conscience for any right feelings whatsoever at all, any humanity they may have left in them, so that they won't ever be convicted of sin. And if they're not ever convicted of sin, then that means that they are not living by what you will call morals, and they have in essence become God themselves, and they have learned how to define absolutes, or what is right and what is wrong, under their own definition. And so the whole universe is basically theirs, and nobody else exists in it. And if they do exist in it, their right is their right, their wrong is their wrong, my right is my right, my wrong is my wrong. But like I said, I've never ran up against any of these people who claim to have this philosophy. And if they really truly believe it, and you question them, like I heard Ken Hovind question somebody some years ago. There was an atheist that turned around and says that I don't believe that there's no God. I don't believe he exists. I think that it's all a fallacy. It's just a pigmentation of men's minds. And then I said, okay. Ken Ovine said, that's good. He says, well, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know everything? He says, no, I don't know everything. All right. And then Ken began to ask the atheist. He says, I'll tell you what. Do you know half of everything? And, of course, the atheist didn't know a half of everything. And so then the next thing you know, the atheist had to turn around and recant, because if he didn't know at least half of everything, let's just say he knew. Let's go this route. Let's say he knew half of everything. Then that means that God knows the other half of the thing, everything that he doesn't know. So either way it goes, his philosophy and his perspective, his ideology and theology is all flawed. We're dealing with people who simply do not want anybody telling them what's right and what's wrong until you do what they call, now they're going to define it, wrong to them. All of a sudden they don't want to participate anymore. So we're dealing with these kind of sick mindsets today, to where they actually, I call it secular humanism, because it's all gendering towards, if it feels good, do it. If the ends justify the means, then I'm right. But until I start crossing over the line and going over into your playground, and which I start doing, and then all of a sudden I'm wrong. So they really truly don't stick by what they claim to be. I don't believe this, or what they define as their own universe or morality. It's easy to shoot down all of these arguments, are very, very easy, because what they deal with whenever they question us about moralities, the only thing they're trying to do is the same thing that Satan was doing over in Genesis, trying to get people to raise doubt, trying to get them to deny that the word is true, and to deny that what God has said is true, also that they can raise a heightened sense of level of humanity and make themselves God and feel good for them own selves.
And, the question I would have to people who think that, the gentleman who espoused that the whole raft and the idea that it was okay. Well, in turn, let's say he kills me and he takes my wife for his own, and he has the food and the water, then if he crashes up on shore somewhere and a group of men kill him and take the food and the woman for themselves, then that's okay, right?
Right.
Because it's situational. He's just going to there should be no complaint that comes out of his mouth as they put him to death, because it is the world he enables. We'll be right back after these messages. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the broadcast. And as I scan the chat room, I want to say hello to everybody who's in the chat room, all good and bad together. And see, I think people are getting a little lost, and they're getting ahead of themselves. Personally, I'll tell you like this. I view morals as coming from a specific location, as being bred into your DNA by way of creation. Whether that is something you believe or not is okay. Okay, you have the right to choose improperly. Okay, and you have the right to bear fruit or to not bear fruit, as I see it. And people will know it. What I'm telling you today is, for those people who want to survive, those people who want to come out on top, you're going to need to prepare yourself, and you're going to have to run your communities, you're going to have to run your local dealings and things on a moral basis. Now, what morals you choose and where you think those morals come from, well, those will be tested against other groups, okay, and their morals and where their morals come from. And in the end, it'll all come out in the wash as to who got it right and who got it wrong. So bickering and arguing about where morality comes from and so forth, if you want to have an honest adult debate, then we can do such a thing. But the reality is what we're talking about here is that you need them. And you're not going to be able to exist without them. You're not going to survive You're not going to have restful, peaceful evenings, because if you do not have a strong moral society, if you do not have morals to bank on, if you do not communicate, okay, morality goes into actually taking part in other people's lives and knowing who they are, to be able to judge, yes, I'm going to say judge, for yourself by the fruits that they produce into the world. Okay, you're going to be able to judge if you can trust that individual. Okay, and this is going to be the major thing. If you're looking to have livestock to feed your women and your children and those who can and can't work and the elderly and so forth, and these people within your communities, you are going to have to be able to trust and have morals for this to operate. And in the reality of the thing, when all of this comes together, you know, there'll be no more word games, okay? Because that's what this world is all about. It's about redefining what words mean. The government does it all the time. The system that you live in is ancient, okay? We're talking all the way stretched back into Babylonian, into the Babylonian Empire, and maybe into the what you know some people perceive or call the Atlantean Empire. And, you know, which is age old and things of that nature. And this is a Babylonian mindset. Today's Marxism is nothing more than a polished up turd that we used to know as the Babylonian way. And it is now called Marxism, and it's presented to the whole entire world, all over the grand scope of the world, no matter what language you speak, no matter what terra firma you set your feet on. Your nation in 50% or more of its nature is fascist or Marxist, the Babylonian way. And, you know, the world is crumbling. You see what this type of mindset, that situational ethics. Well, the banker says that it's immoral to steal your money, but because Congress passed this legislation and these people over here aren't going to arrest me, well, if I'm going to make profit, I'm going to take this risk, and they're going to bail me out, and they're going to give me free stuff, and they're going to take it from other people and give it to me because, well, the ends justify the means. You can see this mentality. It permeates education. It permeates journalism. It permeates 501c3 churches. It permeates your halls of government, your judicial system. I don't care where you go. Okay, this is where statutory law comes into place to start talking about the sovereignty of an individual and understanding what the original Constitution founders meant. And no, they weren't perfect, but this is the reality. And you know, Pastor, I don't see how people can argue with the values and morality, even though it wasn't perfect from days of old. You know, they were working at it and they were building, and morality was achieving certain heights. But now that we have completely abandoned morality for situational ethics, and the whole world is imploding. I mean, everybody, the whole thing is just imploding in on it. So, how is it that people can continue to argue against there being ultimates or definitive answers or empirical data? Okay, because now if you look at the world, a world without morals, the empirical data is in. It's a failure, okay? The world without morals is a failed, miserable, dismal crap hole.
Well, Eric, what's happening right now is that people are choosing to make decisions, and those decisions are based on the decline of the society that we're living in right now. Now, going back to morality to find out how we got to the point where we're at today, is that, you know, for instance, people, for instance, let's go back to the schools. They kicked God out of school by removing the Ten Commandments, okay? Now, what they're doing is saying we no longer want his authority to influence the culture, to influence the minds of our children any longer. And with that, whoever established the authority are the ones who are setting forth the laws and is giving us the principles. 413 times in the Bible it says, "Thus saith Yahweh." Now, that is an absolution, because the Bible sets standards, the Bible sets weights, the Bible sets measurements, the Bible sets volumes. The Bible is an absolute truth. And when Moses received the covenant from the Most High Yah, those 10 Commandments right there, when you go over to Hebrews 8 chapter, it didn't say it found fault, and that's what most people have a trouble with understanding the renewed covenant, or what has commonly been called the New Testament. It did not say that they found fault with the law that Moses had received from the Most High Yahweh, the creator of the universe, Almighty Yahweh. It says in Hebrews 8:8, for finding fault with them, he said, behold, days come, and saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. See, the covenant, it wasn't anything wrong with the covenant. There was something wrong with the people, and the people were making a decision to continue to live their lives going further and further and further and further away from the order that has already been established, which is universal. So when people choose to step out of under the umbrella of the protection of the laws, the statutes, and commandments, whether they want to believe or not believe, is irrelevant. The bottom line is, just like you had stated earlier, when it's all said and done, like here on this community, we're going to find out. My community over here, put an atheist community over right next to us, give us all about 15 years, and we'll see which community survive. We would survive simply because we have a set of standards that are universal, that come from the creator universe who created and made mankind. Now, most people may not believe that, okay? But if you believe that your secular humanism, or the way that you believe in your mind, that you yourself are God to yourself, then you put all them people together over there in their community, and you let them live by what they call morals and their standards, and let's see which one outlasts, which one will last. And because the world is getting worse, the world is not getting any better, and people are making an informed decision to go away from absolutes, to go away from the commandments, we're seeing this decline being accelerated, and we're watching it even go and then even infect the minds of our children, and we're going to continue to keep waxing worse and worse and worse, because evil men and seducers are waxing worse. They are deceived, and they're going to continue to keep on deceiving.
Yeah, well, I hope that, I also know that those who will be deceived, and it is unfortunate for those individuals. I feel the anguish within, I guess, my heart for those individuals. And, like I said, I'm going to back the same thing up. The scope of situational ethics, the scope of lack of morality, well, that community has existed now for several decades. And as the continued erosion of ethics and the continued erosion of morality, the world community only gets worse. And this is what we are seeing, and I'm including Pastor Dowell in that statement, because that's what he just said. You're actually seeing the community that you live in right now is falling apart. Bankers feel that they can steal from you, that they're entitled to whatever you have. Politicians like Barack Obama feel that they should be worshipped, and, that they should be called the anointed one. And these people believe in situational ethics. They believe wholeheartedly in the socialist mindset that, the cumulative end justifies any means that it takes for me to get there. Joseph Stalin believed in these things. Chairman Mao believed in these things. You can go down there into Cuba and you can find individuals that believe these things. You can go to all points within the world, the Chinese, and these people believe their things. And look at their society. Their society is broken. There's no trust. There's no interaction. There's no growth. There's no what I call theoretical evolution, which is thoughts and ideas. People communicating with each other, bouncing ideas back and forth and creating a better world to live in. That doesn't exist. So at the end of the broadcast, what I'm going to say, and hopefully to reinforce, is that you need to be organizing yourself in a moral manner that is opposite to what you already know. Now, if you think you can get that morality from any other location than biblical text, we talk about the Constitution, and it's really funny. People talk about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Well, I can draw direct parallels between the moral code of liberty and sovereign individuals I can show direct correlation into several places in the Bible, Deuteronomy, Acts. There are many books of the Bible where I can show you exactly where these people came up with these rules. And you have non-voluntarists, you have atheists, you have all of these individuals saying that they espouse the same ideas of a voluntary coexisting society. I hope that you understand what was said here. I hope that you take it to heart, and I hope that you guys do something with it. And I can guarantee you that Pastor Dowell is going to be back, because I think this is what we need.
Uh-oh, look at him looking.